Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Well, I'm going to start by taking roll call. Trustee Irvin. Present. Trustee Maestas. Present. Trustee Marks.
Present.
Trustee Mejia.
Present.
Trustee West. Here. Vice President Brown.
Here.
President Lopez, present as well. Welcome, everyone, to the Modesto City Schools Special Board Meeting of August 27th. This meeting is now called to order. Can everyone please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready? Salute. I pledge the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This open session meeting of the Board of Trustees is being live streamed at the direction of the board. The live stream is available on the district website, and the recording will be available for viewing one business day after the board meeting. So Monday, it will be available. Modesto City Schools has provided an opportunity for the public to provide a comment. It is outlined on the agenda. The public has been given the opportunity to call in and leave a voicemail, send us a comment via email, or appear in person before the board. Any public comments received via email or voicemail prior to the board meeting will not be read aloud, but have been transcribed and with copies provided to each board member prior to the start of the meeting and are available to the public. The voice, email, and public email comments will be attached to future board meetings for approval. This practice will continue until further notice. For members of the public that are interested in commenting in the future, we welcome your comments. And I would say that if anyone wants to address the board meeting for public comment on an issue that's not on the agenda, they must complete a presentation request card and to submit it to the board president. I don't see any community this morning, sorry. But if so, you can take them to Ms. Antoinette in the back. With that being said, we're moving on to approval of order of discussion and action items. Is there any changes that we need to make this morning?
I'd like to pull Board Bylaw 9150. This is a student rep board meeting, board bylaw, and I thought it would be a great idea to actually have our new student board member bring this through this year, so she can go through the process of what it's like bringing a board policy / bylaw together. So I'd like to pull Board Bylaw 9150. It's all the way towards the end. And then I do believe Trustee Marks has one as well.
Yes, it was by law. I want to say it's 511. Hold on, I circled it. Just got to find it. It's number 15. It's BP 5113 on absences and excuses to put it at a future date.
Okay, so I have to table BP AR 5113.
Oh, because I believe the public would like to comment on this one, and I wanted to make sure that we had it at a time when they could come in the evening after work or not on a Saturday.
Okay. Okay, so anyone else willing to, needing to remove an item for today's meetings? Seeing none, I will. So we are tabling BP and AR 5113 and tabling Board Bylaws 9150 student board members, correct? Okay. Now, do I hear a motion to approve the approval of the order and discussion items as with the modifications made? Moved by Trustee West, seconded by Trustee Irvin. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. So this takes us to a period for public presentation. Is there any member of the public wishing to make any comments this morning? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to our first agenda, which is the first item of our agenda for today, which is AR 4032, Reasonable Accommodation. Mr. Beauchene, good morning.
Good morning, Board President Lopez. It's good to see everybody again this morning. Good morning, President Lopez, trustees of the board, Dr. Noguchi, and members of cabinet. I present for your review AR 4032, Reasonable Accommodation. This AR outlines the purpose of and process for engaging an employee in the interactive process, both formally and informally, for the purpose of determining whether they have a quote-unquote qualifying disability, as that term is used in the law, and what, if any, reasonable accommodations may be needed in the employee's workplace to enable them to perform the essential job functions of their position. This AR has long been in the district's catalog, but is before you today as a result of various updates made to the language to be consistent with law and the CSBA model policy. At this time, if there are any questions, comments, or concerns, I'd be more than happy to address those.
Thank you very much. Any comments, questions from board members? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to not approve? There. So it's only, we move forward, okay. So we're moving on to VP 4033, Lactation Accommodation, Mr. Beauchene.
This one is very similar to the reasonable accommodation AR. However, it is more specific to a particular kind of accommodation. It outlines the requirements of and process for affording an employee accommodations for expressing breast milk specifically. In particular, this policy outlines the district's responsibilities for providing an appropriate space for the employee and how the accommodation is to be implemented within the employee's work schedule. This is a new addition to the district's catalog and is before you for review and approval based on legal mandates requiring the district to have this policy in place. As usual, if there are any questions or concerns, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you very much. We have a question by trustee Maestas and then trustee Marks. Should I use this? Yes, please.
Okay, I'll use it. Can you maybe give, I know this is tough to give me an example, but can you give me an example of when somebody would get denied lactation accommodations? There's a clause in here about denial, and I just wonder, like, why would we ever do that?
It would be exceedingly rare for our entity to deny this. It would have to be, and keep in mind, these accommodations are very fact-specific and fact-dependent in terms of how they're actually going to be effectuated in the workplace. I, to my knowledge, have never seen or even heard of this being denied. There is language in the law that does allow for that to happen if there is an overwhelming undue hardship or burden caused by implementing this accommodation. But to be honest, I can't think of one right now off the top of my head that would qualify for that level of severity. This would be something where, say you have an employee who, and this is just an example off the top of my head, an employee who doesn't work full-time, only maybe a couple hours a day, and their accommodation is such that they need to be, have the breaks so frequently that it essentially denies them the work. They're spending the majority of what they would normally be doing in their short time already, taking advantage of this accommodation. And so the effect would be they're essentially not working during that time, and they would normally just be out on a leave.
Okay, I mean, I accept,
I think it's the
yeah,
abuse.
I accept your explanation. I'm not quite sure. Hopefully it's exceedingly rare.
It is.
I wouldn't want to be in the position as a district to deny that and see what happens after we've denied lactation accommodations.
Absolutely. What I can say is I've worked with a number of employees over the course of my time in this position. To my knowledge, they have never been denied, not once.
Thanks. I have one more question. do all of our sites and places of work that we have employees have a location or a room that has all of these 5 specific items, most specifically that has access to a sink with running water, that isn't a bathroom, because it cannot be a restroom?
So that's typically the challenge. Now, we've been able to get creative, and so far, we have been able to afford a space that complies with all of these requirements. Oftentimes, the employee's workspace, the employee says, hey, this is fine for me, it works for me. They've got everything they need. They have access to be able to refrigerate the milk after they've expressed it. But out of all the challenges with implementing something like this, finding the adequate space is usually the most difficult one. Especially when you have a site where the majority of their facilities are being used. In such a situation, typically what we try to do is have like a revolving schedule where if a given room is not in use, say like during a recess period or something like that, then we make that available to the employee if it conforms with their schedule for when they need to express.
Would it be possible to get some sort of audit done to take a look at all of our sites and just to make sure? Because once we pass this, right, this is labor code. If there is, if we get to a case where somebody says, well, this doesn't have a sink, well, there we go, now we're in a lawsuit, right, or something. So just to make sure we cover our bases, can we do that?
I don't see why not.
All right, thank you, that's it.
Thank you very much. Trustee
If I
Marks?
can ask a clarifying question of Mr. Beauchesne, these are the regulations in effect now. Whether we have a board policy to that effect or not, you have to approach the accommodation based on regulations and certain procedure, correct? So in other words, we haven't had the policy on the books. There's other guiding documents that direct your working through engagement with an employee?
Correct. So this would be handled no differently than any other accommodation situation through the interactive process. The specifics that apply to these situations are delineated through the labor code.
Thank you for that. Trustee Marks?
I just want to know if we had something similar for students who are lactating and who need a place to express milk.
There is law that also affords this the same rights to students as well. Absolutely.
I didn't see it. And I didn't remember us having one, but I knew we made a lot of accommodations for students that had children, and so I just wanted to find out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Irvin?
Mic is not on. There you go. Oh. This covers both. Like if a staff member, I guess they wouldn't be here on site with a child breastfeeding in one of those areas, right? Or for them to fill up bottles when it's time for them to lactate, and they're filling up bottle or containers for their child's milk. So that's what this policy covers, right?
Correct. This is not actually for the act of breastfeeding. This
Okay.
is for the act of expressing milk so that it can be stored and then brought home to feed the child.
And so we don't have to, purchase or bring in any of those booths, those booths that you see in the airports for, lactating and, that sort of thing, right?
So typically, the facilities that we've provide more than adequate privacy, and we usually allow them the ability to put up a sign when it's in use. We've been very creative, actually, in how we've been able to afford this, even with, for example, transportation employees who are driving a bus. We still manage to afford them the ability to take advantage of these accommodations. But as far as the act of breastfeeding, that's not involved here. This is for expressing breast milk.
And do they have to submit a schedule that they have that they normally, lactate, say, here's my schedule for my lactation. I'll need to be off, during this time to go process that?
That's a good question. That's actually one of the very important questions that would be asked as part of this interactive process to implement these kinds of accommodations. To the extent that there is any regular schedule, we would want to know that. One, so we know how often and for how long they will need this accommodation in a given workday. But two, we also want to try to align it with break times to the extent that we're able to.
Right, that's
Yeah.
what I was getting at. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve BP 43, BP 33 lactation accommodation? The first reading, yes.
I make a motion.
Okay. Motion by trustee Marks, seconded by trustee Maestas. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. This takes us to our next item, which is BP and AR 4111.2, 4211.2, and 4311.2, legal status requirement. Mr. Beauchene.
BP and AR 4111.2 et sec, legal status requirement, outlines the requirements of and process for verifying that an applicant for employment is lawfully authorized to work in the United States. The board policy establishes that the district will comply with the requirements of Title 8, Section 1324A of the United States Code, which is essentially just the federal statutes enacted by Congress, and verify employment eligibility through the use of the Employment Eligibility Verification Form, most commonly referred to as an I-9. The administrative regulation details the process for how the district will conduct this employment eligibility verification. This BP and AR are new additions to the district's catalog and is before you for review and approval based on legal mandates requiring the district to have this policy in place. Again, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from our board members? I have an approval for the first reading of BP and AR 4111.2. We're doing them all right, correct? All at once? Okay. 4211.2, 4311.2, legal status requirement. Do I hear a second? Oh, you had an... All right, we'll take that back and we have a question or a comment from Urban.
Oh, can I be sure?
No, it's not.
No. Hello? Okay, there it is. I just want to know, since this is tied to the I-9 process, is there training for employees who are responsible for screening that, since most of the issues around this, as an employer, usually fall around the mistakes that are made in terms of which documents, verifying and, make sure the correct boxes are checked on the I-9 on the employer side and on the employee side. So I just wanted to know what goes into that to prevent those kinds of auditable, mistakes.
It's a good question. So Mr. Henderson can probably fill in any gaps that I might have, but it's my understanding that when we have a new employee who is going to be working with these forms, the staff who has the most training and experience with this will take them through the process of how to verify those documents, what the requirements are regarding their authenticity, and then how that is signed off on the form.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? If not, I will take Vice President Brown's original motion to approve the VP 4111, 4211.2, and 4311.2 legal status requirement. Do I hear a second? Seconded by trustee Marks. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Beauchene.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Thanks. And this takes us to the reading for AR 4112, appointment and conditions of employment certificated. Mr. Henderson.
Yes, good morning, Board President Lopez and trustees. AR Administrative Regulation 4112, certificated. And by the way, we have a companion piece for classified coming at the end of my set here, so I'll be referencing that when we get to it. We didn't put them together here, but it's a new regulation for the district and details requirements for the hiring of certificated staff and the prerequisites that are necessary conditions for hiring and appointment. As an administrative regulation, it's for the board's information only. Unless there are questions, we'll proceed with adding this administrative regulation 4112 to the formal regulations governing our practice.
Do we have a question from trustee Marks?
I had a question on item 10 as to why it was taken off. And I noticed it was on the classified one, but taken out of this one.
Yes, in the gamut language, that's an optional item for districts that require drug and alcohol testing as a pre-employment requirement. We do not do that for certificated staff.
But we only do it for classified? Is there a reason?
Per board policy, there are some classifications of classified staff that we do, bus operators, certain license classifications.
Okay, I'm only asking because I know we've had some issues in the past, not necessarily hiring, but during the school year. And I know that was an issue with the teachers union, but I didn't know if we had a board policy or not that stated that that was something that we wanted to do. But I thought that it was helpful to know if there was an issue before we hired somebody, just like with classified, you want to know if there's something going on that you need to be aware of before we hire them.
With classified employees that have safety-specific functions and licensing, we do, not as a general blanket drug testing prior to employment for certificated staff. We operate based on if there's a case of reasonable suspicion, then we have a protocol to follow for certificated staff to proceed with. And part of that, in a certain phase, would be directing them to submit to an agency we contract with for drug and alcohol testing and certain procedures that we would follow if they comply or don't, but not as a pre-employment requirement for every certificated hire that we do.
Okay, it just seemed reasonable to me to do that just because they're overseeing our children and our youngest children especially. So, okay, I just was wondering why we didn't do it. Thank you.
Trustee Irvin?
I was just gonna ask a similar question to trustee Marks, but my other question was, you talked about the reasonable suspicion. Are there guidelines that supervisors, whether classified or certificated, have that will allow them to make a determination whether they're reasonably suspicious of a particular staff member?
Yes, if such a case arises where they have a concern to that effect, they would contact Human Resources Office. We have some reasonable suspicion protocols that we would guide them through in terms of observation of the employee and their behaviors and indicators that lead them to believe there's a reasonable suspicion. If it's affirmed by, usually we try to have two administrators objectively make that assessment. We would contact our school safety officers who have been trained in giving some assessment of reasonable suspicion to engage with that employee. If that's affirmed, that they also believe there's a reasonable suspicion, we have an agency we contract with, we would then direct the employee to submit to going to get a drug panel. And if they don't comply with that directive, it's considered insubordination, and we would proceed with certain disciplinary action. If they do, the results of that testing would then dictate whether further disciplinary action is needed. All the while, as it's affirmed, we would remove that individual immediately from any contact with kids until this is resolved.
Okay, now, I guess there's a timeline with that, because I know if it's reasonable suspicion with alcohol, you know,
Yes.
time lapses is really, really important in terms of, you know, now they're reasonably suspicious. 4 hours later,
Correct.
you know, things change, you know, the body.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So when we get contacted, we kind of drop whoever the director is overseeing that particular grade level, drop what they're doing, provide the administrator with the information they need, guide them through the protocol, and we're engaging with that employee. It is time sensitive, and that when the suspicion occurs, if it's 2:30 in the afternoon, it's more difficult, but we try and secure the employee and at the site, and not allow them as much as we can to drive away. Obviously, engage Modesto Police Department when we need to, or the Sheriff's Department. If it's in the morning, then we have the time to work through that process, or even midday. But yes, we're aware of the time-sensitive nature, because you're absolutely correct. We need to make those assessments as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vice President Brown?
Yes, typically, appointments are included in our consent agenda for our meetings. Does that meet the requirement in the very first paragraph that the board shall approve these and it should be reported in a regular board meeting? So-
Correct. We do it through line items, and you see those with the employee and the position. We don't put the salary classification on there. We put the position classification on the line items. Those are in consent. And this AR is not a mandate, but it's one we feel is good to have on the books. But yes, that meets the requirement.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to our next item, which is VP 4112.1, 4212.1, 4312.1, deletion, nepotism, employment assignment of relatives. Mr. Henderson.
Correct. This is proposed to be a deletion because immediately following it, we have an updated policy that is employment of relatives, which I'll be presenting right after this. So it's recommended the board delete this board policy, as it will, pending approval, be replaced by the updated board policy on this topic, which is the next item.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions or comments from our board members? No? So do I hear a motion to delete BP 4112.1, 4212.1, and 4312.1, nepotism, employment assignment of relatives? Moved by Trustee Mejia, seconded by Trustee Maestas. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And this takes us to BP 41.12.8, 4212.8, and 4312.8, employment of relatives. Mr. Henderson.
Yes, thank you. This board policy, 4112.8, et cetera, is a new board policy by number, but represents expanded and updated language detailing hiring, promotion, and other hiring practices as related to the hiring of relatives of other MCS employees. In order to maintain ethical and integrity-based practices, this policy provides clear guidance on what's allowed and what should be avoided when employing relatives into any of our employee groups. It's recommended that the board approve the first reading of BP 4112.8, 4212.8, and 4312.8.
Okay, do I have any questions or comments from board members? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve VP 4112.8, 4212.8, and 4312.8, employment of relatives? Moved by Trustee Mejia, seconded by Trustee Irvin. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And this takes us to another deletion of VP 4131.1, exchange teaching. Mr. Henderson.
Thank you. The date of this board policy indicates a reference to, as we have had before, kind of the post-strike era, at a time when perhaps the idea of districts exchanging staff was necessary for workforce reasons. This is not the district's practice, and therefore the BP is not applicable. It's recommended that the board approve the deletion of board policy 4131.1. Doing so will also free up the policy number that I'll present in the next item. Well, actually, it might be, yeah, I think it is the same number.
Thank you very much. First, do we have questions, comments? If not, I'll take Trustee Marks' motion to delete exchange teaching BP 4131.1 and seconded by trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And this takes us to BP and AR 4131.1, teacher support and guidance. Mr. Henderson.
Thank you. This is a new policy for the district that outlines the philosophy of support and guidance the district provides for our certificated teachers with the ultimate goal of improving performance and through the growth and development of skills, increasing student achievement and outcomes. The policy applies to beginning and intern teachers as well as veteran teachers who may volunteer for or be referred to support based on their evaluation. As the board's aware, the district operates a robust beginning teacher induction program as well as professional development program, all of which are aligned with this policy and AR. There is one edit we caught after the fact in the administrative regulation on the first page of it in the 4th paragraph. We were correcting the pronouns in the, you see the they are in the 4th paragraph is changed from the he, she. But we did not strike the is. So if you're okay with us reflecting the striking the is in the first page of AR 4131.1, 4th paragraph, that would just be an edit change there. It's recommended that the board approve the first reading of board policy 4131.1.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? I do see trustee Marks and Maestas, so I'll start out with trustee Marks.
I had a question on just that right after sharing resources, an individualized plan for professional development or coursework that takes into why that was taken out. It seemed like it was helpful for those who are overseeing teachers. I just thought you might have a good, reason why we decided not to have an individualized plan of professional development for them.
I think we tried to reflect the broad array of different kinds of support that a support provider provides to someone they are supporting. But I don't think an individualized plan document necessarily is created for any individual. But those different types of support, classroom observations, regular meetings, support provider, and the sharing of resources more accurately reflects our practice. With the induction program, there are certain plans and paperwork that have to be done, but not necessarily an individualized plan for every type of support provision that we operate with. And I don't know if Mr. Rich has additional information on that.
No, you are correct.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Maestas?
Is support provider or does this include district coaches, instructional coaches? Or is this something separate than that?
They could be called upon to provide support if we're talking about a teacher who is referred through the peer assistance review process to improve their performance. Could be pairing up with a coach, having a coach come in and give feedback. We often do that with our new teachers, probationary teachers who early observations show they need some guidance in active strategies or active engagement of students. But yes, the coaches, I think, are utilized on a fairly regular basis to support where the support is needed.
I thought I read something in here about the support provider kind of giving information or something based on that for the performance evaluation of the teacher. But I can't remember if I read that or not. I was just thinking about the confidentiality piece of coaching and support providing. And I don't really want to break that if that's in there somewhere.
The CBA.
Okay. Second question I had, I noticed that in your AR you lined out 3 years of full-time experience and put in 2. 2 years of experience is just getting a person into a permanent status. So you're going from probationary to permanent. What was the decision in going down from 3 to 2 years?
I think that is intended just to reflect our practice and how we have selected support providers. I'd have to check the language to refer to whether that is described in our CBA, just to confirm. But this has been more reflective of what our practice has been.
Wouldn't it seem that more years of experience is helpful to provide support to a teacher that's struggling?
I think generally more years beyond 2, 3, 4, the more years you have, the more experience you have, certainly.
Right, but just coming off of being probationary right into permanent, and this is 2 years of full-time teaching experience. This is not like 2 years in our district. This is 2 years full-time experience, period. I don't know. I mean, I don't make the decision here. This is just an AR. You guys write the AR, but I prefer to go back to 3. I don't know if 2 is enough.
I can get
Now,
a
there are
lo-
exceptions. I know a lot of great teachers that come out of college just amazing, right?
Right.
I just still think like 2 years even, I don't know, it takes, there's a lot of research to say it takes 3 years to really get your footing on anything that you do. So 2 years seems just too early for me.
But I think something you need to consider is just the ability to be able to make decisions. If we see a teacher that's coming out of her second year or his second year of teaching and is absolutely dynamic and has been helping other teachers throughout that last year to say, no, you can't, because in writing it says 3, that ties our hands to support that may be given. I mean, as you know, all of these are individual decisions, and I wouldn't want to tie our hands on having something written down and not be able to move forward with someone that we know that could provide support.
Well, in that case, why even have that in there?
It's an AR. It gives us guidelines.
Yeah, I get it.
So I have a couple questions, but yeah, we have 3 questions now. I'll go to Trustee Marks, then I'll go to Trustee West, and then Trustee Irvin.
So along those lines of Trustee Maestas, keeping the lines in, and the superintendent in 3, I think it would, if they've demonstrated effective communication skills, subject matter knowledge, and mastery of a range of teaching strategies necessary to meet the needs of the students in 2 years, then I could see them being able to effectively help another teacher be competent in what they're doing with the students. So I thought we should leave in line the 3, that section there, because it shows that they're competent in what they're doing. I just didn't know why it was taken out. So I think it supports what the superintendent was saying, that if in 2 years they are really good, then they can still, then they can be an effective role model and coach for that new teacher. So I'm just asking if we could keep number 3 in. And then I had another question, because I know administrators evaluate the teachers usually, and administrators was taken out of the paragraph at the bottom of page AR 4131A, point 1A. So at the bottom, just above the word members, that's in black, administrators was taken out, and I thought it fit for the superintendent designee shall establish a peer review panel composed of a majority of teachers with and I thought administrators were supposed to be in there, with the administrators and remaining members appointed by the district. So I didn't know why administrators was taken out, and I didn't know if there was
Could
changing.
you reference again the location? I'm
Oh, yeah,
seeing
sure. It's
4131A.
AR 41, yes, at the bottom of the page.
Okay.
And the paragraph starts with the superintendent, let's see, wait. But the bottom of it is the black, it says in black, members appointed by the district. Just above that is the administrators lined out.
So you have 2 articles that we have in our collective bargaining agreement. One is on peer assistant review process and panel for when a teacher gets referred. If they have an unsatisfactory evaluation, there's a process to refer them to PAR, it's called. So that delineates some of these processes. The other is the article on beginning teacher support. It is article, pardon me.
Right, yeah.
Article 16, Beginning Teacher Support and Assessment Induction Program. So the attempt here is to align the language with our practice based on our collective bargaining agreement with MTA.
Okay,
And those are specifically spelled out in that. And either way, we have to make sure that there is alignment between the collective bargaining agreement and the board policy. We would have to negotiate any changes with MTA to affect a change in the collective bargaining agreement. So this is an alignment issue with that.
okay, thank you.
And I believe also the previous question about the number of years.
Okay, so, but, I don't know, well, we can consider keeping 3 in as it was written originally and adding those 2 years at the end, if that works. That's up to the
I
board.
apologize, the years also for support provider, the change from 3 to 2 is because it's reflected in our CBA as 2 years. So we're
Okay.
trying to make it consistent with the contract.
Okay, but then to keep item 3, what it says about their skills, to be able to do that job in 2 years. Have demonstrated effective communication skills, subject matter knowledge, and mastery of a range of teaching strategies necessary to meet the needs of students.
I could cross-reference that with the contract, make sure there's nothing conflicting.
Okay.
It would be, intuitively, you would think that
Yeah.
should be,
Like,
that should
really?
be something that we're screening for when we select support providers. So
Okay.
if there's no conflicting language, we can adjust that for the second reading.
Okay, that would be great.
Thank you. Trustee West?
Question has already been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Irvin?
Yes, I was just gonna say, could it be, have at least 2 years, but 3 years preferred, or something, since it's just an AR. It seems that like it would cover both the collective bargaining agreement and, but also leaves it open to, preference, 3 years as well, depending on the role or the person and all of that good stuff, I don't know, I just figured to throw that in there, as a way to bring a consensus on this item.
Well, and the thing, let me go back to the purpose of the ARs. So ARs is the how, and the board policies is the what. Board directs the what, and superintendent directs the how. Certainly we're listening to all this feedback and input, and we would never put a teacher of 2 years that doesn't have the competencies and skills necessary to be able to support whatever we see that need is. It could be someone at that grade level or subject area or what have you. So I think it's a good conversation. I think really the point here is we want to make sure that our support providers have the ability, the skills, the talents, the strategies to be able to help our teachers. And so that's the power of this board, right? Because we're all centered on the right thing, and that is support for teachers and quality support for teachers. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. That being said, now I want to bring it back. Is there any modifications or suggestions on the board policy?
I apologize, but I'd have another one. I just wanted to ask about the board policy. That section is, and it might be related to the CBA. It's at the top of page B on the board policy, and it's the beginning teacher knowledge and classroom practice shall be regularly assessed using multiple measures, and the results shall be used to monitor and revise individual induction plans. So that whole paragraph, was that taken out because it's in the collective bargaining agreement? Because that seemed like that was helpful to help teachers be, like I said, competent, and that they would complete their clear credential requirements that this states in here.
The approach to the whole board policy was to review it, to see if there's alignment with what's in the contract. So that specific, do we have the multiple measures regularly monitored in the way that this is characterized or described, or is it done differently? And I can compare the two and give you maybe a follow-up through a board communication about how we actually proceed or what the rationale was for striking that part of it. There are procedures to support new teachers through the induction program that are prescribed. And I know there is a very, as I mentioned, robust support network and process for them. But whether it is specifically aligned with that language is what the
Mike might
conflict
know.
is.
So through the induction process, we do have quite a big, as Mike mentioned, support structure in place. Whether it meets this, this exact language in the CBA on regularly measuring specific things, we'd have to look in that to compare to the CBA. But we do, through that process, they work on what we refer to as the capsules, the California Standards for Teaching. And they have regular meetings, regular opportunity to meet with their mentors to go over those, to discuss how they're addressing those in the classroom, to address how that's producing better student learning. So we do that process through that induction period.
Okay, I just want to be sure because it's 18 months basically for us to evaluate a teacher and see if they're good enough to become a permanent teacher. And if we aren't using all the tools necessary to evaluate that teacher in those 18 months, we're putting ourselves in a difficult position to hire someone that may not be ready for that yet, and they needed these tools to assess to ensure that they have the skills to be able to teach our students. So that's where I'm looking at, because I know sometimes it's really difficult because our time frame is so short, and I've lobbied legislators to make it longer so we had a little bit more time so we could know if they, if this is a fit for them to get tenure and to be in our district for pretty much the rest of their life. So that's why I was just asking those questions, is I wanted to make sure of that.
Yeah, understood.
Okay. Thanks for your answer too, Mr. Rich.
Okay. If I don't see any more questions or comments, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of BP 4131.1, Teacher Support and Guidance? Moved by Vice President Brown, seconded by Trustee West. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And this takes us to our next item, which is the first reading of VP 4141 and 4241 Collective Bargaining Agreement. Mr. Henderson.
Thank you. BP 4141 and 4241 is a new policy for the district and formalizes recognition of the legally binding nature of collective bargaining agreements that we have with our labor partners. The policy reminds us to ensure alignment between the board policies and agreements to ensure consistency in that what's reflected in one is also reflected in the other. If a policy conflicts with the collective bargaining agreement, the agreement shall be binding for the employees covered under it. When an agreement conflicts with a law, the law will prevail. It's recommended that the board approve the first reading of BP 4141 and 4241.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of VP 4141 and VP 4241 Collective Bargaining Agreements? Moved by Trustee Marks, seconded by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. This takes us to the reading of AR 4212, Appointment and Conditions of Employment Classified. Mr. Henderson.
Yes, this, as I mentioned before, is a companion piece to the first policy I presented for certificated. This one is for classified. It's a new regulation for the district and details requirements for the hiring of classified staff and the prerequisites that are necessary conditions of hiring and appointment. As an administrative regulation, it's for the board's information only, and unless there are questions, we'll proceed with adding AR 4112 to the formal regulations governing our practice.
Thank you very much. We do have a question, Trustee West.
Can I just have some clarification? When I read through the item number 5, it was a little confusing. Can you explain what that actually means? That was a little confusing, I think, the way it's written.
I agree with you. It's a lengthy sentence that twists and turns a little bit, so forgive me, I need a minute to kind of see of a situation that might apply to. And you have to reference the stem sentence in the beginning to kind of lead into it. So if we're appointing classified employees at a minimum, if they'll be working directly in an unaccompanied setting with minor children, on a more than incidental or occasional basis, so regularly with kids, or have supervision or disciplinary power over them, not B, I'm not sure about the striking of the B, required to register as a sex offender to Penal Code 290 because of a conviction for a crime. If we're pulling the language directly from the Penal Code, and I can't, off the top of my head, think of a scenario that would help clarify that situation.
I just want to make sure that we don't have in any way, shape, or form a registered sex offender working with our children.
Yes, what I can say is when that came up, there was question, if somebody asked, do you check Megan's Law's list? We don't. Any offense that would warrant somebody being a registered sex offender would be caught through the fingerprinting process. So no, we would not employ somebody who has committed an offense that would lead or result in them being on the registered list.
Yeah, if we can just clarify that, if it needs to be if maybe it needs to be rewritten in a way that's
We can
more
work
clear.
on that for sure.
Let's bring it back.
Yeah.
Let's just rewrite that and bring it back.
Yeah. The penal code, this is all gamut language taken directly, so the only change to it is the B. So this is how it was put into the,
Yeah, let's bring this one back and fix, and run that past an English teacher.
oh,
Oh, no.
wow, okay.
That's a lawyer speaking right there. That's a lawyer speaking.
Wow.
Okay, so we'll be bringing back AR 4212, and we'll be moving on to the first reading of BP and AR 6141, Curriculum Development and Evaluation.
So good morning, President Lopez and trustees. Board Policy 6141 and the accompanying administrative regulation outline and set the process for the evaluation and selection of curriculum. This is a new policy for Modesto City Schools, but while the policy is new, the processes and procedures outlined represent current practice. It is recommended that the board approve the first reading of the Board Policy 6141.
Thank you very much. And before we move on, I just want to thank Mr. Henderson. Sorry, we were on the Henderson roll, and I forgot that this was your last one on
That's
the AR.
okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments on this board policy? I have one question by Trustee Maestas.
Thank you. It's actually two questions, but that's all right. On the bottom of the first page, BP 6141, I'm trying to think about the curriculum. I'm not sure we've really adopted too much new curriculum while I've been on board. There's been a couple of things. But it says the superintendent shall provide research data and other evidence demonstrating the proven effectiveness of the proposed curriculum. This is a new BP, right? So is there an AR attached to this one? There
Yes,
is.
there's an AR attached to it.
Have we been doing that?
Yeah, we do that through the pilot process and the selection. So one of the things you'll see in here is that we set a committee, and that committee narrows down the scope of what we will pilot, and so that process happens through that. They won't select anything that doesn't already doesn't have that data attached to it.
But those data are not released to the public or the board?
So during the public preview for curriculum, we would make that available on, here's why we're selecting this curriculum.
Okay. Second question. There were more questions than anything. The next page in the second paragraph, at a minimum, these reviews shall be conducted whenever the State Board of Education adopts new or revised content standards or the curriculum framework for a particular subject. what happens when we adopt a curriculum and then a new framework comes out from the state in 2 years, but we've set ourselves up with a curriculum for 5 years?
We would review that curriculum to make sure it still is in alignment with the current framework. And while the framework may change, the standards would remain the same in most
Yeah.
cases. So we would just make sure that it's still in alignment, and if needed, we would conduct another pilot if it would be contrary to that new framework.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of VP 6141, Curriculum Development and Evaluation? Moved by trustee Irvin, seconded by trustee Marks. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Rich. The motion passes unanimously. This takes us to VP and AR 6145.6, International Exchange. Mr. Herbst,
All right.
welcome.
BP and AR 6146.6 includes policy recommendations on our international exchange program. The policy addresses both MCS students who study in another country, as well as students who come to Modesto City Schools from another country to study. The language is new and follows recommendations from CSBA. The only omission is the portion on charging students to attend in Modesto City Schools. We do not currently have that policy, and we have not had that policy for as long as I know that I've been in the district. So that part was stricken. It is recommended that the board approve BP 6146.6.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none. Oh, I do. Trustee Irvin.
So this would, in essence, put something in place that's not in place already.
No, we actually have international exchange students that come to us. We don't have a number that have went out to other countries, but that isn't because of the possibility. It just does not happen as often. But we have a number of students that come to us on a year-to-year
Right,
basis.
and we participated in
Yeah.
2 years for Japanese students, so very reluctant at first, but it changed me, definitely changed me.
Yeah, exciting opportunity once, yeah,
Right,
absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Trustee Marks.
So do we receive funding then when the students are enrolled in our district?
No, we do not receive funding.
Oh, wow. So that's a surprise to me, just because, well, I know some districts have taken great advantage of other countries wishing to have their students enrolled in our school districts in America, and they have paid quite a lot of money in some districts to enroll them. So I didn't know that. I just assumed that if we had 25 students coming from another country, that the government would help support
ADA.
that.
I apologize. An ADA, I thought that you were talking about, because you are right, you can charge the actual cost of the individual coming into your school.
Yes.
But I think what Tim is going to say, it's true, we do collect ADA on those.
Okay,
students.
so if
Yeah.
they are
Sorry about
enrolled,
that.
then we receive government funding. Okay, so our government pays for them to come from another country to enroll. Okay, thank you.
Very much. Any other questions or comments? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of VP 6145.6, International Exchange? I have a motion by trustee Vice President Brown, seconded by trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And this takes us to VP 0450, Comprehensive Safety Plan. Mr. Herbst.
Yeah, BP and AR 0450 includes information on comprehensive safety plans, which all of our school sites have, which includes the mandate to have them, which we do, and addresses school safety. The BP also includes information on the requirement for a tactical response plan, which our safety plans include, and the ability for the public to access certain portions of that plan. The BP is new language taken directly from CSBA. It's recommended that the board approve BP 0450.
Thank you very much. I have a question from trustee Urban and trustee Marks and trustee West. I will start with trustee Urban.
Yes, I just wanted to know how up to date was the CSBA language given what happened to Texas recently, and did that make some changes based on that particular school incident.
I don't believe if the changes to the board policy were made on that. I know that we as a district are looking at things from a safety perspective, different, but no, not to the policy.
Okay.
Thank you. Trustee Marks?
Yes, I had a question. First off, this only refers to campuses or school campuses. I didn't see anything that also handled our transportation department, our Reno location, or the district office. Is that another way of, because I figured they deserve the same protection and plans as all of the other school campuses.
Tim, you could help me out on that. We have evacuation plans on our facilities, warehouse, district office. I would assume transportation as well. I don't know if the requirement for the comprehensive safety plan is similar.
That is true. I mean, because it's not a school site, as has been mentioned, but we do have safety plans for each of our satellite locations as well that deal around a comprehensive list of items
Okay.
for safety.
Okay, I was believing that we did. This just went into a lot more detail as to who's informed and when, and I thought that was really helpful. I just thought that, I didn't know if the safety plans on the other district locations were like that. So I hope so, because I just want you all to be safe, because it's, I'm having lived through a lot of different, events, including 9/11 was quite the tragedy here. I mean, it just sent us into a, what do we do now? But just looking at anything that could happen on a campus, how could we protect them? And then the second one I had was about the AR. I know I served on, right after 9/11, I was on and also after some school shootings in the nation, I was on a committee with CSBA, and we were trying to help schools plan out their safety plans and what to do in the event of a big event. And in that, we realized that it was not helpful if the public had specific access to our safety plans so that they could plan their attack according to our safety plans. Because then they knew exactly where we'd relocate people, they knew exactly what we would do. So I also wanted to protect that knowledge from people that might be intent on doing some damage. So is there, I tried to find it in here, but on page AR, the closest I could find was AR 0450C, number 10. It was, and let's see, I just circled it, I didn't write a comment, but it was the plan can identify appropriate strategies and programs that will provide or maintain a high level of school safety and address the school's procedures for complying with existing laws, okay, including all of the following. And so it said procedures for conducting tactical responses to criminal incidents, including procedures related to individuals with guns on campus and at school-related functions. So I'm just looking at it, if the criminal wants to come in and do that, if they're able to get someone they know on this committee, they can review how we handle it, and they could, I would hope they never would do that, but it's just, I was concerned about it. To not reveal that?
Yeah, to not
Oh,
reveal
did I
any
miss it?
portion of the tactical response plan to the public. So the public would
okay.
not have access to the tactical response
And-
plan.
Oh, man, how did I miss it? Okay, thank you. Paragraph 4.
So I just want to, I know that this is a very important topic, here in Modesto City, in the state, in the nation, and potentially in the world. I can say that we are planning to bring forward a presentation later November around our changes for safety security, just to give you kind of the balcony view on that. We do have safety plans on all of our school sites. In fact, I just asked Mr. Herbst for 3 randomly selected schools, and I wanted to see their safety plans, elementary, junior high, and high school. And they did conform to what was written here, so I wanted to actually see it. And I wanted to see that it was updated for the new year, and it is in fact updated for the new year. Secondly, what's not listed in here is we do have Raptor, which is any person that comes onto our school site has to sign in the front office, otherwise they don't get passed. And it actually is with your driver's license or badge if you're a school official. The next level to that is Raptor training on tactical maneuvers, and this is going to take a number of years to go district-wide because we have so many schools, but we actually will be training staff on emergency response and tactical maneuvers on what to do if someone comes onto campus, either bomb or shooter or what have you. I am not in support of actually running students through drills other than the fire and earthquake that they're used to, because I don't want to traumatize kids, that some kids already have effects of trauma, but we are working to train teachers. Then the last piece, and we all know this, is the single point entry. So ensuring that our high schools do have fences around, and I know Mr. Zerly and his team are working on a plan. We're going to again bring that forward the later part of November, in addition to a plan for single point of entries. And you know that we've been working on that over the last summers with the help of D&E and the bond to be able to do that. So there's while this is the actual plan, and I hear you hear the need for schools to be aware. My interest was to make sure there was that safety team on that school that have reviewed, and the reason why I knew that it had updated is because they had certain positions that are new, that were now, the new people were listed in there. So I know that they've sat down and they've looked at this and gone through that. So I just wanted to add that, because I know that this is an important topic, and it'll always be an important topic, and we are working on it. And we'll bring that, Mr. Zerly and his team will be bringing that back in November.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee West.
For that update, Dr. Noguchi. I think it is timely and relevant right now, especially in light of what's going on around the country in our schools. I've worked for schools where we've had our safety plans in binders collecting dust on a shelf, and they never get updated, and no one knows where they're at, and so they're pretty useless. So I'm really happy to hear that things have been reviewed and updated on at least a yearly basis, and so I think that's awesome. Looking at the board policy 0450A, where it says access to safety plans, I just had a question. It says that they're available for inspection by the public. I think a lot of our parents are really concerned about their children's safety right now, and so how and where does the public have access to this if they're interested?
They would go to Child Welfare and Attendance. Senior Director Dave Houck is well-versed on what portions of the safety plan that he is allowed to review with them, and what parts aren't, but they would go to Child Welfare and Attendance.
Thank you. And that should be maybe publicized somewhere on our website or something, just so parents know if they need to, if they're interested, where they can go.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve VP 0450 Comprehensive Safety Plan? Moved by Trustee West, seconded by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes unanimously. This takes us to VP 5112.5, closed campuses. Mr. Herbst.
Yeah, BP 5112.5 includes information, in this case, on closed campuses. In Modesto City Schools, we've elected a number of years ago to only have closed campuses for the purpose of not allowing students to leave school grounds during the school day without permission of parent and school officials. This BP is modified language from CSBA only because it had the open portion of it, and we did have some information on closed campuses before. Either way, it is recommended that the board approve BP 5112.5.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions or comments? I do have a couple questions. Trustee Maestas.
Thank you. How is this, does this line up with other districts in our area?
Yeah, I don't believe, boy, I don't know of any public school that still has an open campus that I'm aware of. I may.
Excuse me, I believe Ripon Unified
okay.
does.
Series
Possibly Escalon. Not sure on that one, but it's ringing a bell, but Ripon for sure.
Series does for, I think, 3.0 students and 11th, 12th grade, only if they get certain privileges, right? But that's only, I think, one school there. I think the other school, so it's school-based. So I wonder, that's because that's what I was wondering, is if schools have the ability to use that as a incentive for students that are doing, that are showing growth or doing amazing work or showing responsibility.
Yeah, we have not set that up historically in Modesto City Schools. I'm not, it's an interesting idea, but yeah, we have not set that up currently.
So that was my one thought before we approve this. The other question is, one school, I know some schools, since we moved to the late start time, also have issues with busing, in the morning, and have done a lot of zero periods, and have given students some options that are taking zero period to give them the option, as long as a parent signs off on it, that they can leave school before the last period of the day. So they get full time in the school, but they don't, it's like early release, I guess, or something. Would approving this not give the ability to do that? I'm not saying that that's just something that's out there.
No, that would not. Approving this would not inhibit the ability for a senior, we'll say, who took a 0 and then left after 6. That would not prohibit them.
Yeah, it's seniors. So this is really just lunch. This
Correct.
BP is really about lunch. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, very much. Vice President Brown.
Yes, with the focus that we will have in the coming year of putting fencing and controlled access to our high school campuses, I would like to know if this policy will allow or disallow students from leaving the controlled area of the campus and going to the parking lots. Seems to me that if we don't address that, we open the door for access to things that are in the cars being brought onto the campus during the school day.
Yeah, our fencing plans are being put together with the help of school administration, school staff, but the students will have access to, the parking lots will not be enclosed from the interior of the campus. So the students will have access to the cars, if that's what you're referring to. That will not be closed off.
So I'm suggesting that should only happen with permission for questions of things like drug trafficking and access to weapons that may be kept in a vehicle that hasn't been searched.
Generally speaking, Trustee Brown, parking lots would be off limits and are supervised during the school day. So campus supervisors would typically be making their rounds through, et cetera. So that is a challenge at some sites, but that is part of the supervision of the campus on a daily basis, is monitoring parking lot access.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of difficult, especially when talking about high schools like Modesto High, where, there's, streets that are actually going through them right now. Our campus is basically divided into 3 parts. You have North Campus, Main Campus, and then you have a parking area that's across the street as well. So I can definitely see why we need to have that kind of structure put in place for safety reasons. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of VP 5112.5, closed campuses? Moved by Trustee Marks, seconded by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And this takes us to the reading of AR 5125, student records, confidentiality.
Very lengthy AR. AR 5125 really includes information specific to student records. The AR includes the procedures we follow regarding the maintenance of and what is considered a student record. It goes into absolute access, those that have limited access, and those that have discretionary access to student records. The AR also includes our procedures for providing access to those records and the process for record destruction. The regulation also includes updating, information on updating name and/or gender of former students. The AR provides an update to our existing regulation and includes the updated language recommended by CSBA. Is there any input from the board on AR 5125?
I have currently no questions or comments on this item. If seeing none, do I hear a motion to, oh, sorry, it's just an AR, so we can move on to the next item? Okay. All right, thank you so much on this item, and we'll be moving on to the VP and AR 5131.62, tobacco. Mr. Herbst.
Yep, BP and AR 5131.62 includes information on tobacco and the harmful effects of its use on our students. The policy includes the prohibition against tobacco use, our obligation as a school district for prevention instruction, as well as tobacco program planning and evaluation. The BP is new language and is taken directly from CSBA. It's recommended that the board approve the first reading of BP 5131.62.
Thank you very much. Any questions? I'll start with Trustee Marks.
I thought there was a lot of good plans in here and ways for students, to help them to not continue on with smoking. But I wondered, do we have anything like this for drugs and alcohol?
We have, yes, to answer your question, yes.
Okay, so we have a board policy on drugs and alcohol. We
I
don't?
actually believe we do. I'd have to go researching back around. I believe it's one that I've taken forward already.
Okay, it's possible. I was trying to remember and I thought, wow, this is odd that it's just tobacco and not drugs and alcohol and tobacco. So,
I believe it's a separate board policy if memory
Okay.
serves.
all right, thank you.
Trustee Maestas.
Just a quick note, there's a lot of his, her, he, she's in this still that need to be changed. 2 on B, 1 on A, and 1 on C.
I apologize for that. This one has been ready to go for a number of our Saturday sessions. I feel that we probably had this ready to go. I did not catch the his, her, but I will make those adjustments.
Very much. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of VP 5131.62 tobacco?
I move with adjust the corrections to the he, she.
I have a motion. I have a second by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. This takes us to VP 6177, Summer Learning Programs. Mr. Herbst.
Yep, BP 6177 includes information on our summer learning programs. The policy addresses summer school programming as well as our ability in including additional summer learning opportunities for our students, which you guys were made aware of at Director Lamelli's presentation. This is new language and taken directly from CSBA. It's recommended the board approve BP 6177.
Thank you very much. Trustee Maestas.
One quick thing, there is a he, she on this one too. So if that can get fixed on A. And I would like to line out 5, number 5 in summer learning programs. Assigning summer vacation homework in core curricular subjects for extra credit. Extra credit goes against grading for equity, and we can't be going towards equitable grading if we have something in a board policy that contradicts that.
Oh, it looks like somebody has a light on. Did she, I was just gonna say, I think it's fine. I think assigning summer vacation homework in core curricular subjects is fine. I could see taking out for extra credit, but I do know that an IB program, that's required. That they have to do a lot of core curricular subject area during their vacation time in preparation for the next year. A lot of reading.
Well, I understand that, but also, what about kids that are at work and have to work during the summer?
Right, but if they're in the IB program, they would tell the IB, this is what my schedule is, and they would tell them, these are the 3 books you have to read this summer. So they'd have to figure that out, because they start the year with review of those books. So
Okay,
unless
so
they've changed the IB program for some reason.
what's the percentage of IB students that are low income?
We had a report on that back in the spring. We can bring that back to you, but there is a significant amount.
Okay, I'm gonna just say I can't vote for this in its entirety unless 5 is completely taken out, based on my research on summer homework and extra credit, and the equity it has on students, especially those of low income.
What I would recommend is that we pull this board policy. We convene a teacher group and they come back and do a presentation on this. Because while I can appreciate and certainly support initially your viewpoint on this, because I strongly believe in the equity for grading practices, I also know that there could be some unintended consequences. So let's get a teacher group, and Mr. Rich, this is number 4 of your committees. Let's get a teacher group together to be able to really research this and be able to come back and provide the board with a variety of different data points, and then you will have a better understanding, and then you guys can vote on where you want to go with this, so we can know what those implications are. And I don't know if it should be there or not. I mean, initially I would agree, but on the same token, I don't want to tie the hands of the teachers that may be using this and have been using this for many years and it's been successful. So let's take a look at that. And if there's questions that teachers have, if you could filter those to me, and for the board members, if there's questions that you have specifically that we can ask the teachers, then we can have them research that and provide a recommendation coming forward. Will that work?
Well, I'll add one more thing to that. I'm okay with, like, summer vacation homework in and of itself is fine, as long as it's not used as part of the grade for their grade, right? Because we've got kids that can't, they won't be able to do stuff because of work commitments, family. Maybe they're taking care of their siblings the whole summer because their parents are, like, we have to understand that that's happening. As long as it's not part of a grade, that's fine. They can give as much work as they want. And then the extra credit piece, definitely that needs to be taken out. But if you're gonna get together a teacher team, I'd also like to hear from experts in the equity world that have done the research.
We're currently working with Dr. Doug Reeves in regards to equitable grading practices, so we'll make sure we bring that up with him. We'll direct that question directly to him as part of that group.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm hearing a table to table this item. There's a couple other, there's one more question. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the question, and then after that, we'll vote on tabling this item. Okay? So Trustee Irvin?
I just wanted to say, I mean, I agree and disagree. You know, being that my daughter went through the IB program, and that, you know, for me, summer learning decreases the brain drain, you know, over the summer. But also, I would like to know the data of, I know Trustee Maestas said certain students, which, you know, there are students, but do they represent the exception rather than the rule in this, you know, in these situations? When it comes to that, what percentages of students that we know that are working or supporting families, and you know, all of this, you know, for me, that would help drive where we should go in this process with including that summer vacation homework. But and I also I agree that it shouldn't be extra credit. But at the same token, you know, what are the numbers? What is the data telling us in terms of the students that have some of these other things going on outside of school that impacts their family life and their personal life because of their social economic status?
Thank you very much, Trustee Irvin. Vice President Brown?
Yes, we've specifically referenced the IB program, but I know that this also applies to many of the AP courses. And my focus would be, if this does inequitably affect certain groups, what can we do to help them with the benefits of having summer learning, so that we eliminate the inequity and still retain the benefit of this extended learning period of time.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I have no more other questions or comments. So the reason why I'm asking for a vote to table is because we didn't table it at the beginning in the agenda item. So do I hear a motion to table VP 6177? Motion by trustee Mejia, seconded by trustee Irvin. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, this item is tabled to a further meeting. All right, and this takes us to the reading of AR 5113.11, attendance supervision.
Yeah, AR 5113.11 includes procedures regarding attendance supervision. Our attendance supervisor, who's the Senior Director of Child Welfare and Attendance, is charged with providing a culture of positive attendance. That's one of his job responsibilities, as well as establishing supports for those who do not regularly attend school. It's recommended, well, actually, on this one, it's an AR. It is, I look for any input on AR 5113.11.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to our next item, which is VP 5132, Student Conduct Code 7 through 12.
This one's a little tricky. So BP 5132.2 currently is our board policy regarding the student conduct code in grades 7-12. Previously, our board has opted to have the student conduct code be part of our board policies. That is in alignment with CSBA, but that's okay. I have a solution. It's recommended we move this current BP 5132 to BP 5132.2, which is an unused reference number by CSBA, at least currently. So it is recommended that we move existing BP 5132 to BP 5132.2, and I can explain it in a little bit better detail, the reason why on the next item.
Changing numbers.
Correct.
So on this item, we're just changing the number.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, so do I have any questions on changing the number?
I tried.
If not, do I hear a motion to approve the change of VP 5132 to VP 5132.2? Moved by trustee Mejia, seconded by trustee Marks. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
My innovation score continues to rise. Dr. Noguchi, please take note.
And this moves us to our next item, BP and AR 5135, Dress and Grooming.
Hopefully now it's starting to come together. So BP 5132 provides information on dress and grooming. The policy acknowledges the desire of dress and grooming that contributes to a productive learning environment. The policy also includes relevant sections of education code and merges our former grooming and dress policy with the new language provided by CSBA. It's recommended we eliminate the former BP 5135 on dress and grooming, which reference number does not match CSBA, and approve BP 5132 with the proposed revisions.
Very much. Any questions or comments? Trustee Marks?
So I had, I wanted to ask one question about number 3 on the first page of the AR 5132. On hats, caps, the following guidelines shall apply to all regular school activities, and hats, caps, and other head coverings shall not be worn indoors. And it didn't make any exceptions for religious attire or for students of certain cultural ethnic backgrounds. That's part of their attire.
There's another section that
No, I tried to find it. It wasn't in this.
Gender, page C.
Oh, page C, okay.
Thank you.
tell them about.
Okay, yes, but I read that, but then I said, well, why is it here and doesn't say, or this doesn't refer to that or have that statement in there that says as appropriate to, I don't know, I just thought that it was odd because it said they shall not be worn indoors. That's so matter of fact. So I was like, okay.
We are, and the AR really matches with the dress code that is currently in our board policy and the conduct code. We are assembling a dress code committee this year. So I would propose, and obviously that will go before the board as our dress code is part of the conduct code. But we are doing that, and with that, there may be some changes to the administrative regulation depending on what the committee decides and ultimately what the board approves.
Okay, that's good. Also, only because we've gone through this dress code like in many ways and added all of these things that have been lined out at one point. So especially on page A of this, but I would like to see, I really did like the paragraph right after standards, and it's number 1 that was lined out. It says, students shall dress appropriately for educational activities in which they will participate so as not to endanger their health, safety, or welfare or that of others, or cause a disruption to the educational process. Clothes shall be sufficient to conceal undergarments when sitting or standing. So I didn't know why that was taken out, but I thought it would go really well right after the following guidelines shall apply to all regular school activities on the previous page, because the other one was taken out as well. So, do you see what I'm saying?
I do. I thought there seemed to be such repetition because I went back to the BP on the first paragraph where it talks about appropriate school wear for appropriate activities. So I thought it captured it, but the AR does get a little bit more specific.
Yes.
That's what you're looking for?
Yes, I did appreciate that this is what we're expecting, and so students and staff are, know what that is, even without the list, and then I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with for the new standards, because we had that nifty little graph that we made, or the students made, so that, especially the ones on the committee worked on that, so that would be helpful, and I just would like to see that back in the AR, if that's good. That was the only change I had.
Okay, trustee Masses?
Yeah, I'm missing some of that AR, like all the first few pages. So I have no idea where you were talking about with hats. Mine starts at gang-related apparel, so, but I'm glad you asked that, because I would have had that same question, so. You don't have that part? Well, see, if we came together and sat next to each other, we'd make a whole piece. Okay, I don't have A and B and C. Yeah, A through C, I don't have that for the AR, but it's just the AR part, so. My question has to do with BP Part A, the second line. When practical, students shall not be directed to correct a dress code violation during instructional time or in front of other students. I get that. During instructional time. I'm sure sites and teachers know that, like, so if a teacher sees a student that has inappropriate, what are they supposed to do?
Well, it does say when practical, so I think it would depend on what that individual student brought in. So I could just imagine a time to where something that would be completely inappropriate would probably be addressed immediately. Something to where, hey, this is a dress code violation may not be called out to where you need to go up to the supervision office or the intervention center or to see an administrator at that moment, but might be done after school time.
So we can, when practical, we can just kind of be a little flexible with that and just like they can do, okay, that's fine. I just didn't want to like put something on paper that end up like telling teachers, well, you know what, you can't do anything during class until it's a break time. That would make things difficult.
Trustee Irvin?
I just wanted to go back to number 3, the hats, caps, and other head coverings shall not be worn indoors. And so, so just a cultural group in our community, Sikhs, who have their headdress, they're not allowed to wear them indoors?
They are.
Okay.
It
See,
says
that's
on C on the paragraph, yeah, I know that, because I
See, I
read that,
missed-
but it was different, yeah.
You don't have C?
No.
5132C? Dress and Grooming.
Oh,
Yes,
okay,
it's in the
C.
AR.
Where did you see C at?
It's AR 5132C.
Oh, okay, C, okay.
And the
Okay,
red paragraph,
shoot.
yeah.
I don't know how I missed that. Okay. Very good.
Vice President Brown, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So on the AR, I know we're not trying to pick apart ARs, but I think that there's such a clear issue here on number 3 that we should at least reference the paragraph on number 3 so that the question doesn't come up every time someone reads that.
On which,
3 on the AR.
I would suggest when the edits come out, all that stricken language, the red part will come right up underneath that once it's cleaned up. So it'll be number 3, 4, and then the next sentence will be the portion that says, you know, for religious reasons or other reasons, there could be exceptions made. It won't be 2 pages down once all of the
Good,
revisions
I
are
think we
made,
would all agree to that.
if that addresses the
Yeah.
concern.
Yeah. I would just say, in parentheses, see next paragraph. Because I know that someone will read that and probably stop reading and be like, and then, yeah, exactly. So let's at least address, like, see next paragraph.
yeah, that's a
Okay.
good idea.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Just
beat a dead
imagine.
horse here. Oh, thanks. I don't want to be a dead, I just want to know why, like, why are they banned? Like, why are hats banned indoors? Like, I don't know, like,
And that's why we're doing your
I,
committee.
I would,
yeah,
uh-huh.
like, I don't know.
Trust. Trustee
Not
Matt,
always in
is your-
church. I don't know. I don't understand why.
Your question is one that has been brought up a number of times, and hence the reason why we want to get a committee together to make some reasonable revisions to our existing dress code.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
again, yeah, if that by chance changed, then what I would be doing in front of the board is get your approval on the proposed dress code, but also would be making adjustments to the administrative regulation.
Good. Any other questions or comments? If not, let me see if I'm doing this correctly. So we are eliminating, we are changing the name of the VP 5135 to VP 5132 with still dressing, called Dress and Grooming, and approving it. Is that the first reading?
Correct.
Correct. So
And
do
then
I-
we're adding back that paragraph from the second page, from A. Just at the top, the students shall dress appropriately, right
Okay.
after the following guidelines.
But then trustee Marks, you also had recommended not, the bulleted list was not as important, or was not, you wanted the paragraph.
Right, just the
just wanna
paragraph.
make sure I
I
understand.
like the bullet list, but I'll wait until after they come together. So I liked how it was written, that paragraph.
So we're approving the new 51, VP 5132 with the modifications as previously mentioned. Do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion.
Motion by trustee Marks, seconded by trustee Irvin. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Herbst, and I've been asked by several of the board members to have a 10-minute bathroom break. We're good? Okay, so we'll be back here at 10:51.
If you don't go to the bathroom.
Same thing. No, I want all those, make sure every single, no, I don't care about that. I mean, do it, but I want to make sure that every single safety plan has been updated, make sure he does an audit.
We'll get started shortly. We are moving on to the deletion of BP and AR 1314, solicitation of funds by organizations not under the control of the schools. Mr. Surley, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, President Lopez, trustees. I won the board policy lottery today, and I think the next 20 or so are going to come from me. So you have me for the next several minutes or however long it takes. So thank you. This is a recommendation, a recommended deletion of board policy 1314 and the corresponding administrative regulation 1314. There's not a corresponding CSB policy for this number, and Education Code 51520 is stated in our Business Services Handbook that is dispersed annually to all of our departments. So we believe it is recommended to approve the first reading for deletion of Board Policy 1314.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the deletion of VP and AR 1314, solicitation of funds by organizations not under the control of schools? I have a motion by Trustee West and a second by Trustee Marks. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. This takes us to VP 1330.1, joint use agreements. Mr. Zerly.
Yes, this is the first reading and review of Board Policy 1330.1 as new language for joint use agreements. The language has been reviewed by staff and would be used for future use if needed. I don't believe we have any current joint use agreements in our district, but it is recommended to approve the first reading of Board Policy 1330.1 for joint use agreements.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, do I hear?
I missed my
Trustee
question. It was
Marks.
on the next page. I just wanted to know if this precludes any nonprofits from leasing the buildings? Because it was very specific onto who could lease these buildings, and it.
So this is not, and I apologize if I don't answer your question. This is not into wording or about leasing district property. This would be if we wanted to partner with a joint use or partner with a nonprofit for a joint use agreement for, say, a city park or something.
Okay.
So unless I'm misunderstanding your question, this is not about leasing our current district facilities.
Okay, that's what I was looking at, that it was like leasing it. Okay, thank you.
Trustee Marks. Oh, sorry, Trustee Irvin.
Does this, don't we have like joint use agreements with the city of Modesto for some of our facilities, or does that not include?
This would be, I mean, for instance, let me just give a hypothetical. Let's say we wanted to, we were interested in the closed golf course, the municipal golf course. We could seek a joint use agreement with a partner, whether that's the city of Modesto or some other youth organization. That's what that would be for. We have agreements with the city of Modesto to use our facilities or us theirs, but we don't, to the best of my knowledge, we don't co-own any facilities with any other agency.
Right, okay, all right, thank you.
Vice President Brown.
So I wasn't here at the time, but Johansson Swimming Pool, was that not a joint use agreement?
A part of it, I just found out that one of the buildings the city owns, but I don't believe the pool itself or the equipment or anything around it is part of a joint use agreement. But I can check on that and follow up on a board communication if I'm wrong.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve BP 1330.1 joint use agreements? Moved by Vice President Brown, seconded by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Our next item is the deletion of VP 1331, use of school facilities by outside youth groups. Mr. Zerly.
Yes, this is another recommended deletion for Board Policy 1331, use of school facilities by outside youth groups. There is not, again, there's not a corresponding CSBA policy for this number, and we have current Board Policy 1330 for use of school facilities, which covers outside youth groups in Board Policy 1330.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain the motion to approve to the deletion. Moved by trustee Mejia, seconded by trustee Irvin. All those in favor of the deletion of BP 1331, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. This takes us to VP 3000, concepts and new roles. Mr. Zerly.
Yes, this is first reading and review of Board Policy 3000 as new language for Modesto City Schools for concepts and roles for district business and non-instructional operations. It is recommended to approve the first reading of Board Policy 3000, concepts and roles.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of VP 3000, concepts and roles? Moved by trustee West, seconded by trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Our next item is the first reading of BP and AR 3100, budgets.
Yes, first reading and review of Board Policy 3100 as new language for budget. The language has been approved by Financial Services staff and is consistent with our current budget and Budget Advisory Committee practices outlined in the AR. The corresponding administrative regulation language is attached for reference only, and it is recommended to approve the first reading of Board Policy 3100, budget.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? I have a question by trustee Maestas.
On the AR, I just have a question on why the change to lining out students in 7 is made.
Our current Budget Advisory Committee does not include student or student representation, which is why we wanted to match the current practice that we have. We would be open to considering a student voice, but when we formed this Budget Advisory Committee, students were not part of that
Well,
process.
It does say may in the top, so even if you kept in that students, it still
catch.
matches what
You're
you're
right.
doing. Yeah,
Yes,
just that way in the future, I mean, it's an AR, but,
we will make that edit.
okay.
Thank you. Vice President Brown.
Just a question in that regard. That's not an area where a student representative to the board is precluded from voting, is it? So I would concur, let's keep it there.
Yes.
I think in an effort to, I think you should see that this year as well, is to continued student voice. Our budget advisories, honestly, it would be a waste of their time. They have very valuable time, especially our student board rep, who we have in many different meetings. However, this year with our superintendent's student advisory group, they are going to have a section on just budgeting, so we are going to get their feedback and input with additional students that are going to be in that group. So there's 4 from each junior high and high school, and our board rep is also going to be in there. And that's going to be some really valuable information, and it'll be productive as opposed to sitting through a meeting where they're kind of glassy-eyed. And so in addition to, they're on the LCAP committee as well. So we will get student voice. I agree with trustee Maestas. It's May, we can put it in there. But the other advisory, I see some adults with their eyes glassing over. So we just have to be cautious of their time.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, do I hear a motion? Oh. Trustee
Come to the
West.
light. I think great minds think alike because I had the exact same thing underlined as trustee Maestas and trustee Brown on student voice. And I just think we need to listen to our students when it comes time to how we're spending our money because they have a different viewpoint and might see things differently. So I'm glad to hear that we're going to incorporate that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee West. That being said, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of BP 3100 budget? Moved by Trustee Mejia, seconded by Trustee Irvin. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. This takes us to our next item, which is BP and AR 3101, deletion of school district budgets.
Yes, again, this is another recommended deletion of Board Policy 3101 and the corresponding administrative regulation 3101. There is not the same number, CSBA policy, and the language is covered by the prior agenda item, Board Policy 3100. It is recommended to approve the first reading for deletion of Board Policy 3101.
Thank you very much. I have a question from Trustee Marks.
I just had a comment that it was really interesting reading. The principals were in charge of their the whole budget. I guess they were given a certain amount back in the 80s. So it just was very interesting reading. So I just had that comment. So, but I'll make the motion to delete this item as is.
We have a motion to delete VP and AR 3101 school district budgets. Do I have a second? Second by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Our next item is VP and AR 3260, fees and charges. Mr. Zerly.
Yes, this is first reading and review of language revising Board Policy 3260 for fees and charges and the corresponding administrative regulation 3260. The revised language aligns with CSBA language and our current practices for fees and charges. The administrative regulation language is attached for reference only with suggested changes, again, to match our practices and CSBA language. It is recommended to approve the first reading of Board Policy 3260 for fees and charges.
Thank you very much. I have a comment and a question from Trustee Irvin.
Yeah, I mean, I remember this, I believe this policy became a big point of contention some years ago with the cheerleading at Modesto High School. So it's good to see it's being updated and things like that, but yeah, I remember that vividly back then. Yeah. So I just wanted to point that out.
We've come a long way.
Thank
Come
you.
a long way. Yeah.
Trustee Meneses.
Can you just quickly explain to me the process for PE clothes that students are those available to be given to students so that they don't have to pay for PE clothes?
I defer to my colleague to the left of me to help with that one.
So I know we have some guidance for our sites on that. I don't know specifically to what degree we have loaner programs or distribute. I know we sell PE clothes typically at our 712 sites, but I would gladly get some more information on that and provide it in a board communication as to what the supports are for students and what the expectations are. It was there was actually some language in a prior BP or AR this morning on dress and grooming that referenced physical education clothes and special circumstances not adversely impacting students' academic grades relative to that, so.
Right, okay, so that's perfect, because I know that here, it says on the collection of debt denying full credit for any class assignment, which is often PE teachers grade based on whether students dress out in their PE clothes. So if a student doesn't have PE clothes, and they can't afford PE clothes, what is the?
Mr. Rich and I were actually just having that conversation at the break relative to the dress and grooming and PE standards and grading and PE clothes and expectations, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No other questions or comments? Do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of VP 3260, fees and charges? Moved by Trustee Maestas, seconded by trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And this takes us to AR 3111.4, procurement of technical equipment. Mr. Zerly.
Yes, this is a review of language, new language for Administrative Regulation 3311.4, the procurement of technical equipment. The administrative regulation language is attached for reference only, has been reviewed by our purchasing department for consistency and our practices when appropriate in purchasing specific types of technology equipment.
Thank you. Is there any questions or comments? If not, we'll move on to our next item. The first reading of VP and AR 3314, payment of goods and services. Mr. Zerly.
Yes, this one is first reading and review of new language for Board Policy 3314 for payment for goods and services and corresponding Administrative Regulation 3314. The language has been reviewed and approved by Financial Services and is consistent with our current practices. The administrative regulation language is attached for reference only and is recommended to approve the first reading of Board Policy 3314 for payment for goods and services.
Thank you very much. I have a question from trustee West.
I just had a question, and I'm not sure if it's appropriate for this one, but do we try to use local workers and services as much as possible when hiring people or buying goods?
Yes, we do, and that would not be part of this particular board policy or administrative regulation, but we do. We search for multiple, if it's under the bid limit, the required bid limit, we search for multiple quotes. In many cases, we want to provide as much support to our local vendors as possible. But when it gets above a certain limit, it's out of our control when it's a bid requirement. But I am pleased to report even on the $100 million of work we had going on this summer with projects, I would say 75 to 80% stayed local to local vendors. But to as much as we can, we do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Urban?
I just wanted to kind of go back in that payment for goods and services, just to piggyback on trustee Dr. West. I wanted to know when, like for the PE clothes, when we sell those to students, are we selling them the PE clothes at cost, or do we make a profit from the clothes we sell to students?
Unless Mr. Godot has a different answer, I can do some research and follow up on the dollar amount that's charged to our. I would assume we're not making a profit off of our students in PE clothes, but I don't have specifics on that at the school sites, at the 712 school sites, but we can definitely follow up with the process for that.
Okay, yeah, I just want to go back to that equity.
I would just point out that the school purchased or PE clothes that are available in our ASB offices or at sites for 712 students are not required wear, meaning the PE shirt or shorts, it's not a specific set. They don't have to purchase it, as that's the only thing that's the acceptable uniform for physical education. Just want to make sure that's there. But I'm not sure if they're sold at cost or not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
Just to
very
be
much.
clear, are you asking about the PE clothing for PE class or what's sold in it? Okay, all right. Okay, we can definitely get some information for you on that.
Thank you very much. Do I have any other questions or comments? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of VP 3314, payment of goods and services? I have a motion by trustee West. Do I have a second? Second by trustee Marks. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Our next item is VP 3314.2, revolving funds. Mr. Surley.
Yes, this is first reading and review of language revising Board Policy 3314.2 for revolving cash funds. You may have an attached AR 3314.2, but that's all black language. There's no changes to that, so I apologize if that is included in yours as well. The revised language for Board Policy aligns with our current practices for handling revolving cash funds. It is recommended to approve the first reading of Board Policy 3314.2 for revolving cash funds.
Thank you very much. I have a comment from Trustee Marks.
I just had a couple of edits. I think they were crossed out accidentally, but we'll find out. So it's on they're both on page A, and there's, so the paragraph that starts with any person who issues a check drawn on. So then down on the fourth line, it says funds, and shall be is lined out. So if you read that sentence, it says any person who issues a check drawn on the fund personally liable, and I think it should say shall be personally liable for the amount of the check if the expenditure is a violation of the district's rules and regulations with respect to the fund. So I think shall be was just accidentally lined out.
Okay.
And then two paragraphs down that starts with pursuant to ed code. I believe that in the third line, administrative officials, I think is supposed to stay. Administrative staff, never mind.
Yes,
I see it now.
That one
Okay.
read a little
It is, it's awkward.
strange.
Yeah.
I had to reread that one as well, but yes, staff is the red addition
Yes.
from the CSBA policy.
Yes, so that was, I had read it and missed the staff at the end of that sentence. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Brown.
Just curious if revolving funds includes ASB accounts?
Does not.
Does not, okay,
Does
thank
not.
you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of VP 3314.2, revolving funds? I have a motion by Trustee Irvin and a second by
I'll second.
Trustee Marks. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And this takes us to our next item, which is VP and AR 3400, Management of District Assets and Accounts. Mr. Zerly.
Yes, first reading and review for language revising Board Policy 3400 for management of district assets, accounts, and the corresponding administrative regulation 3400. The revised language aligns with recommended CSBA language and our current practices for management of district assets and accounts. The administrative regulation has been revised also and is attached for reference only. At this time, it's recommended to approve the first reading of Board Policy 3400, Management of District Assets Accounts.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions or comments? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of VP 3400, Management of District Assets and Accounts? Motion by Trustee West, seconded by Vice President Brown. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Our next item is VP and AR 3430, Investing, VP revision and AR revision as well. Mr. Zerly.
Yes, this is first reading and review of language revising existing Board Policy 3430 for investing and the corresponding administrative regulation 3430. The revised language aligns with recommended CSBA language and our current practices for investing. The administrative regulation language is new and is attached for reference only. It is recommended to approve the first reading of Board Policy 3430, investing, and I apologize, I do see a he, she reference in there. That one we missed on the first page, and if there's any others.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of VP 3430, Investing? Motion by Trustee Marks, seconded by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And our next item for revision is AR 3511, Energy and Water Management. Mr. Zerly.
Yes, this is review of language for a new administrative regulation. Revised administrative regulation 3511, Energy and Water Management. The administrative regulation revised language is attached for reference only, has been reviewed by our Sustainability and Adaptation Department for consistency with our current practice.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Trustee West.
I have a question on the maintenance of our yards and our watering systems. You know, being in a drought, I think we're all concerned about it. And I have been receiving emails about some of our properties, some of our schools that have runoff and I don't know if it's broken pipes or overwatering. And I'm just wondering, could we have an easy place for our community members to report when they see? I know our people can't always be aware when the sprinklers are going off or there's a pipe broken, or if it happens during a time where our employees aren't on campus. Is there an easy place where it can be reported so we can make sure that we're just really good stewards of our water and we're not wasting?
Let me check and see if we have a tip line or hotline, but my suggestion would be the easiest place is that school. First, they all have maintenance personnel at their school site that are responsible for those particular areas. If not, then it can go up to Roger Orth or someone in the maintenance division. But let me see. I don't know if we have anything published as to if you see this, what to do. But that's a good idea. But my suggestion would be the school site first, because they're the ones that can get to it immediately.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Irvin?
I wanted to know had there been any discussion about, given the drought and things like that, many of our schools have patches of, grass in the front of the schools and things like that, and maybe replacing them with more energy efficient, the artificial grasses and things like that. Is that an option for us on those smaller patches of grass across the district that, like when in the front of the school, some of them have front of the school have, grass there, and maybe can replace all of those with artificial grass that has a long, some of them have quite a bit longevity with them or not.
Absolutely. And I know this summer, as we walked around each school site, Franklin in particular, that one that comes to my mind, we look at areas that have, little sections of grass, and you wonder why. I mean, obviously, at some point in time, they decided grass was a good point there. And now we're replacing it with more xeriscape, opportunities where we don't have to irrigate grass. We put in drought-resistant plants or just some ground cover that would replace that to beautify the school, but also limit our use of irrigation. So those are done on a case-by-case basis as we see them. But yes, we are looking at every opportunity. We're very fortunate now. We will no longer water 2/3 of our stadium fields. The tracks that are going in our junior high schools, I know they're having a well put in at where we can at those to provide irrigation. So we're looking at every opportunity we can. But if there is a patch of grass that is just there for no reason, yes, can we take it out? Can we replace it with something more drought tolerant?
Right. Yeah, I mean, and plus artificial turf is a lot more aesthetically pleasing as well. We just got to hope that nobody go there and put a hole there and use it as a putting green, but, but, it could be some options.
Yeah, we'll look at all those options as we get further and further into the severe drought status that we're currently in.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll be moving on to our next item, which is BPNAR 3515, Campus Security. Mr. Zerly.
Yes, again, this is first reading and review of language revising Board Policy 3515 for campus security and the corresponding administrative Regulation 3515. The revised language aligns with recommended CSBA language and our current practices for campus security. The administrative regulation language is being revised and is attached for reference only. It is recommended to approve the first reading of Board Policy 3515 for campus security.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of VP 3515, Campus Security? Moved by Trustee Marks, seconded by Trustee West. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And this takes us to our next item, VP 3515.7, firearms on school grounds. Mr. Zerly.
Yes, this is first reading and review of Board Policy 3515.7 as new language for firearms on school grounds. The proposed language is recommended by CSBA. It aligns with Penal Code, and it is recommended to approve the first reading of Board Policy 3515.7 for firearms on school grounds.
Thank you very much. I have a comment from Trustee Marks.
Yes, I had a question. Have we, because I read the penal code and I was trying to understand it better, but I was wondering if we'd checked with law enforcement to see if this actually makes our campuses safer for those who, teachers that we have that have concealed weapons permits and that might be on our campuses?
I don't believe even a teacher with a CCW can have that firearm on campus. It has to be a law enforcement officer, is my understanding.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. The way the penal code is written, they can also, if there's a domestic violence or someone that's might be, they might have someone trying to harm them, they were allowed to have it according to that penal code, but there were a lot of subsections. So I was just wondering if there was a way to, I just wanted to understand where the law enforcement stood on this as well.
Well, the law enforcement, the officers, Modesto PD in particular, I mean, support this. I mean, this is, like I said, this is law. It's in penal code. So I'm not quite sure what you mean by support this. They don't, I mean, obviously they don't believe that firearms should be within a certain number of feet of our school campuses and our staff and our children.
I don't know. I know police officers who may disagree with that. So that's why I just didn't know if we checked with them because of they have some differing viewpoints than sometimes we have. And so I just wanted to make sure that they understood what this was. I know anyway, because I'm in some of those meetings with some different law enforcement at different times. So I just didn't know where they stood. So I wasn't sure as relates to this. I tried to figure out what the penal code said and how it would relate to our students and our staff, and if the staff supported this, and if if they were still good with this. I know, anyway, I know at one point our board had to make a decision as to whether we had a button to push in case, someone came into our board meeting with a gun, and we decided that it was safer to have law enforcement in our meeting because they would be there immediately, and we wouldn't have to wait for them. So I just had some questions on that because I know that, anyway, some people have gone through a lot of training for concealed weapons permits, and I just wanted to know, and then they have to be approved, they have background checks, all of that. So I'm assuming that we have staff members that might have that right now. So I didn't know if this would change anything that we already are doing.
So, Mr. Zerly, will you work with Roman and identify the laws and restrictions for teachers or staff on school campuses, just to be able to provide clarity for Trustee Marks in a BC? And then that way we will know and you would know. I don't know if our board policies align to what we believe law enforcement should or shouldn't have, but I do know that there's laws through the penal code. So if it's confusing, we can dispel that. And so we'll get Roman working on that, and we'll put that in a board communication for you.
Yeah, we'll definitely follow up. If there's any specific questions you want answered, please let me know. But again, outside of a certain specific instance that you referenced, even a CCW holder is my understanding, is not allowed to have a firearm on our school grounds.
Okay.
It has to be a law enforcement officer.
Yeah,
Our security officers
Yeah.
cannot do that.
Okay,
So, but we can get you specifics on that.
okay, so could we have it before we vote on it, or could we have it, and you could put this in maybe in a consent, or for first reading, or are you asking, I was just asking to move it to, so I have that information before I vote on it?
My understanding of what you're talking about is you're just asking, can a teacher or a staff member with a concealed permit have a gun on campus? I don't know if that would change what's going on here, because penal code trumps education
Everything.
code.
Right.
So if we say no guns here because ed code says they can't have it, but again, I think we need to take a look at what penal
Let me
code says.
just read, I did print off
Okay.
the secondary language from CSBA. It does say pursuant to Penal Code 626.9, the possession of a firearm on school grounds or within 1,000 feet of a school is prohibited except by a person who meets one of the exceptions specified in law, is a law enforcement or honorably retired peace officer, a member of the military force engaged in the performance of his or her duties, a security guard, or a participant in an existing shooting range at a school or in a school-sanctioned sport or activity. Another exception in Penal Code 626.9 allows a person with a valid carry concealed weapon license to carry a firearm within 1,000 feet of a school. However, as amended by AB 424, Penal Code 626.9 eliminates the authority of the superintendent or designee to provide written permission for a person who holds a valid CCW license to possess a firearm on school grounds. So it sounds like there now is, since 2017, that provision for a CCW staff member has been eliminated.
And that's where I was trying to understand that, because I read through that penal code when I was trying to understand this better, what this policy meant and how it might, that's why I wanted to know. So it sounds like they can have a written permission from the district to have one on campus. That's what on that last paragraph that you read?
No, it's
Oh, they cannot.
AB 424.
Okay,
It was a 2017 statute, eliminated the authority of the superintendent or designee to provide written permission for a person who
oh,
holds a valid CCW license to possess a firearm on school grounds.
okay. Oh, okay. I understand that now. It had so many sections that I had to click on to try to read what it actually meant, so, okay. Well, thank you.
But we can still, I mean, if you want, we can still follow
Well,
up with
it sounds like
more information.
that's the clarity that we would have asked general counsel to provide, so I don't know that we need to, but although we can put this in board communication so you can see that.
Thank you. Trustee Urban? Okay. Trustee Maestas?
Yeah, I just want to point out that even if the penal code changes, anything changes, the language in this BP allows for that change. It says, under the limited circumstances specified in the penal code. So whatever that does, this still, it could be a living document based on the penal code. So this doesn't, we don't have to be as specific because that drives this little piece. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments?
Oh, my apologies.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. Thank you.
Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of BP 3515.7 firearms on school grounds? And I have a motion by Trustee Mejia. Do I have a second? Second by Trustee Maestas. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And this takes us to our next item, which is BP 5116, school attendance boundaries. Mr. Zerly.
Yes, thank you. This is first reading and review of Board Policy 5116 as new language for school attendance boundaries. The proposed language is recommended by CSBA, and it is recommended to approve the first reading of Board Policy 5116, school attendance boundaries.
Thank you very much.
President Lopez, I would like to propose that we add something to the very first paragraph at the very end, because I know this is something that the board and the committee last year did look at, and that is to include this, this last part, make recommendations to the board for boundary adjustments, comma, through the lens of equitable opportunities for students, period. And the reason why I say that is we're going to be coming back to you early this winter with some recommendations for proposed boundary changes through the lens of equity for our schools. So I would recommend adding that in part to the sentence.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of BP 5116 school attendance boundaries with the additions just previously mentioned? I have a motion by trustee Maestas and a seconded by trustee Irvin. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Our next item is VP 7112, school sites superintendent responsibilities. Mr. Zerly.
Yes, this is in essence a numbering change, but it is first reading and review of new board policy number 7112, redesignating the number for existing board policy 7111 to match the CSBA number. It is recommended to approve the first reading of board policy 7112, superintendent's responsibility.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions or comments? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of 7112 school site superintendent responsibilities? I have a motion by trustee West and a seconded by trustee Mejia. Reverse that. Oh, okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Our next item is VP and AR 7111, evaluating existing buildings. Mr. Zerly.
Yeah, so the prior item was needed for this first reading and review of new board policy 7111 for evaluating existing buildings and the corresponding administrative regulation 7111. The proposed language is recommended by CSBA and has been reviewed by our maintenance staff. The administrative regulation is attached for reference only. It is recommended to approve the first reading of board policy 7111, evaluating existing buildings.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from our board members? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve?
There's a he, she in that one, if that's what, sorry. If they're, okay.
Okay. Trustee Maestas.
Yeah, that was one thing that I did write down. But when we evaluate existing buildings, this looks like it's mostly for structural safety. But does that also include like student safety from maybe like the elements? As we have more drought, we have hot and climate change, we have hotter days, or we have, well, I don't know, just if our structure actually keeps our kids safe, besides the structural element of it.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, we do annually health and safety evaluations as well. But that is prior to students' return, so it wouldn't. But we do have specific set points for climate control in the classroom, inside the classrooms for both cooling and heat. If that classroom is outside of that designated comfort zone, we do respond immediately for adjustment or repair. But we would rely on the reporting from the school site for that. It's not part of our just annual our annual monitoring as far as a centralized maintenance team. We do respond when noted, but we do track, though we do have an electronic work order system now that will track if we have a specific building that constantly gets the same requests over and over again, then we have a problem that now we have data to suggest something needs to be done. But other than that, I don't have anything specific to report right now.
Would it, okay, I'm just wondering if
I'm
it
not-
should be added in there about the health and the health of our students as much as the structural safety, like the structural and health safety, but that might be something
It
for
may-
a different,
It may be something in the 5,000s.
Yeah,
in
that's
our
something
student
different.
Section. We can double check that and then we'll follow up.
That'd be great. Thanks.
And let you know.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first reading of VP 7111, evaluating existing buildings? Okay, I have a motion by trustee Marks and a seconded by trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. This takes,
Point of personal privilege, I have to leave. I have interviews to do with CSBA, so I apologize, but I'm glad we got this done, and I'm glad they moved the meeting to noon for me. So I'll see you all soon, I'm sure. Thank you.
thank you very much for joining us. Okay, we'll be moving on to our next item, which is VP 7131, Relations with Local Agencies, Mr. Zerly.
Yes, thank you. And just going back real quick to trustee Maestas, anything with the 7,000 is around facilities. So, I mean, we could make an assumption that, I mean, our facilities should trickle down to staff and students, but I'll double check and see if there's a student health board policy that would cover what you're asking and outside of facilities.
Well, I guess if you know, there's one thing to have structural safety, but also like, I know this is old, right? We probably don't have any structures with lead paint, right? That's, and asbestos, stuff like, oh, see, now you're
do.
thinking, we do. So
We do.
stuff
I mean,
like that, that's the safety of our, like the health safety of our students.
Right.
Are we constantly monitoring that? And is there a BP for that, specifically the health and safety of our students?
Let me double
not
check
just the
that. We
structural
do have a
safety.
hazardous materials plan, just like we have a safety plan or something else. We have structures that were built in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and lead and asbestos were very common in those construction eras. We do have a hazardous materials plan, but I'll get you more information around that as well.
I hear your concern. I feel like the BP addresses that in that first paragraph where it talks about the needs and providing a healthful and pleasing environment for students and staff. And I think that it talks about a healthful environment, so doesn't that incorporate all of the students' health, whether it's physical health or comfort? I just feel like it already kind of addresses that.
And what you don't see is, as Dr. Noguchi points out, the board policy is the what, the administrative regulation is the how. What you don't see in this is an administrative regulation, how we're going to provide that. But we can definitely get you that, if it's not in another policy somewhere else.
Yeah, I understand the what and the how. I was really looking for the what, and
Okay.
Trustee West just pointed that out, so I'm good with
All
that.
right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can proceed with VP 7131.
This is first reading and review of new board policy language for 7131. Language for relations with local agencies. The proposed language is recommended by CSBA and matches our current practice as reviewed by our facilities department. It is recommended to approve the first reading of board policy 7131 for relations with local agencies.
Thank you very much, and I have a comment from Trustee Irvin.
I wanted to know if we could use the word relationships with local agencies versus relations. I just think the term relationship has a more concomitant touch to it, relation. You went there, Trustee Brown, not me.
So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is our board policy, your board policy. So just in the title, Or I can look and see if there's any other relations in the wording of the body, but we can definitely, if that's the board's recommendation, we can change the word to relationships.
Yeah, I mean, to me, just, you know, relationships with local agencies, to me, is, you know, bridges, you know, a more personal touch to it.
Yes.
Okay.
No objections from my board.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, so do I hear a motion, and bear with me, do I hear a motion to approve BP 7131 with the new title of Relationship with Local Agencies and modifications to any preceding relationships in the text? I have a motion by trustee Irvin and a seconded by trustee Maestas. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Our next item is VP and AR 7160 Charter School Facilities. Mr. Zerly.
Yes, first reading and review of new board policy language 7160 for charter school facilities. The proposed language is recommended by CSBA and would be used in the event a facility request came from an eligible charter school within the district, of which we haven't had any, but it is in education code, so the board policy will just align with education code in the event the request comes in. The administrative regulation is attached for reference only, and it is recommended to approve the first reading of board policy 7160 for charter school facilities.
Any questions or comments from our board? Trustee Irvin.
Just one, how does this affect us, given that our charter falls under the city? City of Modesto, don't we fall
So
under?
this would be charter schools, either charter schools, so.
Right.
If either they're chartered by us or not, if they're within our boundaries, this is what that would apply to. It doesn't have anything to do with our charter for Modesto City Schools with the city of Modesto.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the first reading of VP 7160 Charter School Facilities? Moved by Vice President Brown and seconded by Trustee Irvin. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. And our final item from Mr. Zerly is the deletion of VP 7441, contractor's bond approval.
Yes, this brings me to the end of my items. Thank you for your patience. This is a recommended deletion of board policy 7441. There's not a corresponding CSBA policy for 7441. And the process that's outlined that we're suggesting to delete is covered in public contract code. Our contractors are required to have a performance and payment bond whenever we go into a construction agreement with them. So it is recommended to approve the first reading for deletion of board policy 7441.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Do I hear a motion to approve the deletion of BP 7441, contractor's bond approval? I have a motion by Trustee Mejia and a seconded by Trustee West. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Zerly, for joining us this morning. And we'll be moving on to VP 2122, Superintendent of Schools. This is Ms.
Wonderful.
Noguchi.
Thank you. Well, first I'd like to start out, we're right on the downslide. We've only got 5 left, so I think we'll be out of here within this next 10 minutes or so. But first I want to say thank you for giving up your Saturday to do this work. I know that it's hard to give up a Saturday, to be away from family, friends, and other obligations. So I appreciate your time. I can say that doing this work over the last 4 Saturdays that we've done this total, we've done well over 250 board policies that would have been embedded in each one of those meetings, and it would have been much more drawn out and made our Monday nights much longer. So I definitely appreciate it. When I first came in 5 years ago, we were hundreds behind. So we really came about these Saturdays so we could get caught up. And we are getting close to that point where we can now start integrating. We still got a couple more Saturdays, but we are getting caught up. So thank you for your time, and I do appreciate that. So I will start with the next couple board policies and then board bylaws. You're reminded that board bylaws are just the agreements that we make as a board, as you make as a board on how you act as a board. So that's a bylaw and board policy. So the first one is board policy 2120, just changing the number to board policy 2122 to make it consistent with CSBA.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on this item? Trustee Maestas.
On number 6,
Yes.
says when his own tenure or salary are under discussion.
Nice.
I'd like to change that to there.
Okay. Perfect.
I think that was the only change I saw in there. That's it.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments, other board members? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the change of VP 2120 to VP 2122 and modifications to the he to theirs on the new VP 2122 Superintendent of Schools? Motion by Trustee Maestas and seconded by Trustee West. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Our next item is VP 2120, Superintendent Recruitment and Selection. Dr. Noguchi.
So board policy 2120 really aligns to the practices that you all will go through in selecting the next superintendent. This is a board policy that brings it up to date with CSBA as well, but it also mirrors what is in our board bylaws and really the process that you used in the selection of the last superintendent, which was myself 4 years ago. So at this point, I'm just looking for approval for board policy 2120, unless there is any additions or subtractions you'd like me to make.
Trustee Maestas?
Sorry, there's a his, her on the second page on A,
Okay.
on the bottom of qualifications. Second to last paragraph. Yeah, I apologize for being so picky.
No problem. All right. Do I have any other comments or questions? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the first revision of the new VP 2120 Superintendent Recruitment and Selections with the modifications? Moved by Trustee Mejia, seconded by Trustee Maestas. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 Any against or opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Our next item is Board Bylaw 9110, Terms of Office. Dr. Noguchi.
So bylaw 9110 is a new bylaw outlined by CSBA, really speaking to terms of office. And each of the paragraphs are aligned to education code and election code. So it's already in statute. So at this time, I'm looking for any questions that you might have. Otherwise, I'm asking for approval for bylaw 9110.
Any questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve Board Bylaw 9110, Term of Office? Moved by Trustee Mejia, seconded by Trustee Maestas. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Our next item is Board Bylaw 9150. Oh, sorry, I didn't
Yep,
cross.
we're gonna skip that one.
That one was tabled. Our next item is Board Bylaw 9223, filling vacancy. Dr. Noguchi.
Alrighty, and I believe this almost gets us to our last one. So, Board Bylaw 9221 is how we go about filling vacancies, should they come about, either through resignation or other means. This is a new board bylaws that we will be adding. So if you have any questions, or comments, otherwise I'm looking for approval for bylaw 2223.
We have a question from Vice President Brown.
Oh, yeah, I'll get this.
Yes, referring back to the one that we just reviewed, the third paragraph in 9110 says, board members whose terms have expired shall continue to discharge the duties of office until their successors have qualified by taking the oath of office. We know that there are several cases throughout the state where an opening takes place because no one runs for office. Does that mean that this third paragraph kicks in and that someone who had been serving continues?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know that. And I think, yeah.
It leaves that wide open.
Yes, it does.
And it's not addressed with this section on filling vacancies.
I can, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, but I can certainly ask Roman on what that is. So when you have a vacancy that's unfilled, at what point, what do we do in that position? I don't know.
Okay. So that doesn't change us from voting on either of these policies, but I think it's a clarification that we would want to request from CSBA and from.
Right, it's something that's left out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve Board Bylaw 9223, filling vacancies? Moved by Trustee Mejia, seconded by Trustee Irvin. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Our last item of this morning is Board Bylaw 9320, meetings and notice. Dr. Noguchi.
So this is a board policy, or board bylaw that we do have, but it looks like the pandemic has caught up to bylaw 9320, and that is including the teleconference location. So it's really aligning with the practices that may happen when we, just over the course of the last 2 years. So it's just added a few additions there.
Okay, any questions?
Any questions?
Questions or comments? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve Board Bylaw 9320, meetings and notice? Moved by Trustee West, seconded by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And do I hear a motion to approve the adjournment for this morning? Moved by Trustee Irvin and seconded by Trustee Mejia. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much to everyone.